How you doing today, guys? Have something I want to talk to you about. Just some personal opinions on the Spyderco Nirvana, the new model, which most would think I'd be pretty crazy about. And most people are going real crazy. As promised, I switched up to EDC. Do we even call it EDC? Maybe call it today's carry. Somebody had a comment before. Don't call it EDC if you don't carry it every single day. They kind of have a point, right? So anyways, you guys already know this is the M390 Ritter Grit Titanium. Don't have to go over that. Have a full video on this and a full video on my Rexford rut. I do like this rut. I seem to be favoring traditional knives more lately. Not for any particular reason. This is still a great tool for me personally. Just expensive. I mean, yep, I've got tons of videos on that. So anyways, looking at all the hype and everybody trying to run and find one of those Spyderco Nirvanas and you know, all the hype, any kind of hype. That knife's highly anticipated. I am not interested. I wouldn't say at all, because I would like to get it in my hand and see what it's about. But I think they took a big swing and a miss. And let me explain myself first. I want them to succeed. I want to see higher end models. I'd love to see them compete with like Chris Reeve and that higher tier bracket of very high end production knives, even if they're limited production, kind of like ZT has done with some of theirs, their model line, like the Eclipse, the Hinder and stuff. They've even teamed up with Hinder for the Eclipse. I'm sure most of you guys know and probably even own one. Anyways, about that Spyderco Nirvana, to me, it feels like they were trying to click off all the checklists that most of the modern day collectors like. So what would that be? Titanium frame lock, and then with the integral construction. Yep, very, not as rare as it was 5 years ago or so when Lion Steel started making that SR1 and stuff. But bearings, yeah, let's talk about that for a second. And I'm not a bearing hater, not by any means. I do prefer washers most of the time. But why did they put bearings on that knife? Because if you think about what it really did, is they have a thicker blade, okay, and then it's S90V. That's awesome. And then they milled out a pocket on one side of the blade, so it got a little thinner on one side, and then they milled out a pocket on the other side of the blade to fit the bearings in, right? And then they'll slide that unit into the one-piece construction frame of the knife.
Another big challenge is it has ball bearings in it. So it does have those ball bearing washers, and the way that they're building that is they're putting the ball bearing washers on the blade and they're rolling it into place.
That particular knife, looking at pictures, I don't have it in hand. It seems like the titanium is not thick enough to have a pocket milled in. And if you could do that, I don't know how you would get the tooling inside that one-piece construction. You know what I mean? To mill out that pocket on the inside of the knife to slide the bearings into. So my main problem with that knife and why I'm particularly not interested in it, yes, it's a great blade steel, a great design, it looks great, kind of. To me personally, I don't dig that geometrical shapes on that. I like Peter Resente's custom work where he does all of his rock textures and carving and this and that, but I don't particularly like that scratched on look. It just looks very odd and weird, and I know that was one of the things that held back the production of that knife too, according to Eric Glesser. Very difficult to do that. That pattern, if this is not the knife obviously, but it wraps all the way from the top around in one continuous line and then on the other side. So they could have done without that. But for me personally, when you take away, you have this thick blade. This is not a thick blade, I'm just pointing to this. And you mill out one side, you mill out the other side to slide the bearings in there. how much meat is really left around the pivot of that knife. And then I'm pointing at this knife. I really should not talk about this knife. I don't have it. But anyways, just using this as reference. They did like a saber grind. So now it's a thick blade. It looks like it could be a hard use knife. It's all one piece construction and everything. But around that pivot, I wonder how much steel is actually left around the pivot by the time you mill away for those pockets. And I also wonder, do they have some sort of hardened steel, I would hope on a $500 knife, or whatever they go for, $430, something like that. I would hope that they have a plan for the wear and tear of that knife over time. You've got hardened steel bearings on that knife running into titanium. I want to see one disassembled. I would love to see a video of somebody who has disassembled theirs, because I wonder if they put that very corny, almost tinfoil washer that they use on the Domino and on the Southern, or did they do a nice washer, or are they literally riding that hardened steel bearing on softer titanium, and that's gonna create a track over time? I mean, maybe it won't be an issue, but I wouldn't be comfortable with it. I wouldn't want to have a $400+ knife doing that. So anyways, not a hater, and I hope that that knife does well, and I think it will. I think it has, but I think there was some design features that I don't see were a very good choice for that knife. I think if they were to put it on washers and leave that blade stock the full thickness it was, and not go milling out each side, for me personally, you know, just because you can does not mean you should. So while the bearings checks off that little, yep, modern day folder collectors are looking for bearings, well, not all of us are, and I mean, I'm saying that in generalities, but looks like they're just trying to check that box off, which I'm surprised they didn't do like a one-piece milled clip, which, funny enough, some people are complaining it should have had a milled clip. Anyways, to me that doesn't matter. For me personally, I like the Spyderco hourglass clip. I can see their complaint on that end, but as a Spyderco fan, I really am a fan. I do love their hourglass clip. It works great, and I don't see that as a miss. What I see is that big, thick S1, it's not S110V, S90V blade that's thick, that's ground at a saber grind. Okay, so it's probably not going to be the greatest cutter in the world. And then also, it's a big, thick, beefy blade. Yep. But then there can't be much meat left around that for any kind of lateral prying strength or anything like that. You know, now, will most of those knives get used? I don't know, but that's not the point. It should be a tool first, especially with Spyderco. That's kind of their motto. It's got to be a tool first. So I don't know if that knife was more geared towards testing out that ultra high-end market, or if it's just made as a collector piece and hopefully people will put them in display. But I really wonder, you know, how much meat is left around the blade. Again, for the third time saying that. But I also wonder what kind of plan they have for that bearing riding on the titanium. I don't know. I know there's other knives that I have seen, I can't remember them off the top of my head, that do not have a protected surface against the titanium. And, you know, who knows? It might be 2 lifetimes from now when that would ever be a problem. But I would think if you was compulsively flipping your knife, right, that could be an issue, and that bearing would start to wear a track in there. But I guess people will deal with that as that problem comes up, if it ever does come up. The sticky lock, I can't blame them. I don't have one in hand. If you look on the forums, some people say they've had the problem, some people haven't had the problem. Some people say for $500 it shouldn't be, should be. I know personally, I don't have that knife in hand, but I could carbonize that lock, I'm pretty sure. With some careful masking, I could hook up my electrode on one side and I could run my carbonizing bit and I could carbonize that lock face. Now, will that screw up with the geometry that they have designed? I have no idea. I don't have that knife in hand to look at. You know, sometimes, and I have before, refused to carbonize certain knives because of the way the lock face was ramped. Obviously, a Benchmade. This is my carry today. If the lock face is really ramped and you carbonize it, yeah, that carbonizing doesn't make the lock slippery, but it makes no stick. And if you've already got a lock face that's really ramped, you almost need that stick, otherwise the lock slips. Perfect example. Earlier, old lockup Striders had that real deep curve on them, and if they didn't stick, guess what happened? They had the lock rock and the lock slip. So certain knives you can, and certain knives you cannot carbonize. So anyways, I do wonder why they did not carbonize it. It's probably pretty labor intensive. I mean, maybe add in an extra 15-20 minutes onto each assembly of the knife. Maybe that's why they didn't do it. Have they ever carbonized any of their knives? That is a very good question. I don't remember seeing any that have been carbonized, because I have done a ton of Sage 2s, and I know I did my Southern, and I feel like I've done a few other Southerns, but I'm not sure if they come carbonized or not. I don't think they do. But anyways, some people were saying like the Sabenza, which is carburized. It's like a case hardening of the titanium, where they heat it up, and I would assume that they put it in some sort of oil or cooling solution or whatever. If you open up a Sabenza, take a look on the lock bar, you will see that heat coloring. That's because they have like case hardened that. They carburized the lock face on the titanium. So that's how Sabenza deals with it. You know, as far as going back to the Nirvana, I don't know. For me, I love the way it looks. I don't dig just looking at it. Again, I'd like to get one in hand. How thin the handle gets back here, and I just really do not dig that weak pivot. But maybe it's just a logical flaw on my part, or maybe a design flaw that will never be exposed, because how many are really going to go out and pry a door down with it? To me, though, that's not the point. That's like a custom knife maker making a beautiful, beautiful showpiece and then not putting an edge on it. It's a knife. It should have an edge on it. Anyways, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Waiting, yep, it's about 2:30 now, so I can head to my next stop. And maybe I'll catch you tomorrow. I don't know. I really enjoy this style video. And I have more videos planned, more reviews. The topic for tomorrow might be a little review talk. Anyways, we'll save that for tomorrow. I do appreciate it. See ya.